Cider Business School today. My name's Emily Kovac. I'm the editor of Cider Culture, and we're really excited to be presenting this with ECOS. I hope this is a really great resource for anyone who's approaching the cider industry or already in it. Today, our session is about production, maintaining high standards and high quality, which of course is at the top of the priority list, I think, for most craft producers, cider makers especially, I think. And leading our session today, we have Josh. And just a little bit of info about our teacher today before we begin. Josh is originally from Baltimore, Maryland, and came to Charlotte, North Carolina 2 years ago as a Venture for America Fellow. That's a fellowship that matches recent college grads with startups in smaller American cities to help kind of boost the entrepreneurial community in those smaller cities. So Josh came to ECOS in 2019, and he takes a data and process-driven approach to helping producers every day. So this is his bag, this is his expertise. Excited to have someone for whom this is their focus to kind of guide us through such an important topic. So thanks again so much for joining us, Josh, and our participants. And Josh, take it away.
Sure. Well, thanks for that, Emily. Again, my name is Josh. I'm with the ECOS Customer Success Team, and really excited to be speaking to you today about production and how technology and software can help you maintain high standards and keep making that quality product. So a little bit more about me. There we go. Technology works. Before we get started, again, I'm on the customer success specialist on the customer success team, rather at ECOS, where I started in late 2019. I've worked with dozens of cider producers across the country and internationally as well. And I've helped grow their business side of things, help better them manage inventory, production, and I pride myself on taking a data-driven and process-oriented approach. A little bit more background before we launch into things about ECOS and cider. If you were on last week's Cider Business School webinar, this is going to be a bit of a rehash for you, but ECOS was founded in 2014 mainly as a software to help craft brewers and breweries run their businesses. But as time went on, we kept signing up cideries, and we found that many of our friends in the cider industry were encountering the same issues, the same problems as those in the beer brewing field. So in the past 18 months or so, we've not only onboarded many new cider customers, but also improved our software to accommodate the needs of cider makers as well. So a couple disclaimers before we get started. Number one, first thing I like to throw up on here is technology is not going to solve all your problems. This webinar is going to be largely on how technology can help you manage production, but it's not going to make cider fermented any faster. It's not going to make ingredients any cheaper, and it's certainly not going to help if you don't get buy-in from your entire team, which is something that we'll be touching on in a bit. Number two, this is not a sales pitch. While I work at ECOS and ECOS is a frame of reference for me, we're just trying to be the best partner we can for cider makers and for the cider industry, because we realize that your success is vital, is necessary, is integral to our success. So we're just trying to provide you with as much information as we can to be the best partner that we can for the cider industry. Now, if there was a third disclaimer on here, there's not. It would be that I am not a cider maker. I know a thing or two about making cider. I've worked with many cider makers in the past 8 months or so, but chances are that if you're on this call, you know a little bit more about cider making than I do. I'm not here to tell you how to make cider. I'm here rather to provide a frame of reference and show you how different pieces of technology can help you manage the production side of your cider business. So without further ado, we're going to dive into production management. And the first thing that we need to do is define what production management is. And for our purposes, production management is layered. It's keeping track of inventory in real time. It's creating recipes for your various bases and styles. It's keeping detailed records of batches, and it's also allocating work across your production team. Now, again, we're going to be discussing how technology and software can help you realize these pursuits. So I'm going to really discuss on this webinar 4 key areas that technology can help your production management. The first is lot tracking. This is perhaps most important and most crucial. Lot tracking and more generally, inventory tracking. Now, keeping track of the inventory that comes into and out of your facility and when and what is used and when is crucial for creating quality products and is perhaps necessary for legal compliance. And we'll touch on more on that in a minute. Second, technology can help you manage recipes. Keeping your recipes in a software platform institutionalizes production knowledge at your company. Keeping recipes in a software can also create ingredient forecasting and can also give you a better understanding of the costs of goods that you're producing. Third here, technology can help you manage tasks for your production team. Task management through a software means no longer calling folks on the phone, scrambling to assemble text messages, emails to piece together the day. When everyone knows what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, your team can be more efficient, which is going to ultimately save you a lot of time and money. Oh, and finally here, I almost forgot, technology can help you create and generate accurate records. So the generation of accurate records is really a product of the first 3 things I mentioned here: lot tracking, recipe management, and task management. Obtaining accurate records is going to help you achieve consistency, experiment scientifically, and produce quality products. So let's get started here. We're going to get started by discussing how technology can help you in lot tracking. As I'm sure many of you know what lot tracking is, being on this call, but before we dive into things, I want to give a brief overview on what lot tracking is. So lot tracking refers to the ability to track inventory in distinct lots, both raw ingredient inventory as well as finished good inventory. Many, if not most, producers who use lot tracking pick their inventory on a first in, first out basis, although you can also pick on a last in, first out basis or a first expired, first out basis. Now, I like to think about lot tracking like grabbing vegetables from your fridge. So you want a system of determining which vegetables you eat first, those at the back of the fridge that you purchased last week, those at the front that you may have purchased yesterday, or those that expire closest today. That's just the way I like to think about lot tracking. Now, lot tracking can be very technical and it can be hard, but it can be very helpful as you grow. For Canadian producers, lot tracking is actually now a legal requirement. As of July 15th of this year, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency ruled that manufacturers of alcoholic beverages must have a traceability system in place if you conduct interprovincial trade. For those of you that don't have such a legal requirement, such traceability legal requirements may be coming your way. And more generally, it's just best practice throughout the craft beverage industry to have some sort of lot tracking system in place. And while lot tracking is doable using spreadsheets or just a pen and paper, in the end, using a software to track lot tracking is going to save you a whole lot of time and energy. So this video was produced by that Canadian agency talking about traceability requirements. I've included it here. It provides a great overview on the requirements that the Canadian government is now making producers adhere to when it comes to lot tracking. So let's watch this for a few minutes. Well, I'm getting a message here that the sound is not going through. This presentation is going to be provided in an email follow-up following this webinar. So I encourage you to check this out then. It's a super helpful video that breaks down the traceability requirements. I again apologize for that technical mishap, one of the adventures of COVID-19 coming into play. So we'll advance to the next slide here. Okay. So I wanted to include in our discussion of lot tracking, moving on, I wanted to include these next few slides during the beginning of this discussion. A few customers who purchased some product from Trillium Brewing a few weeks ago, our marketing team caught this. A few customers who purchased this product had their cans of product explode if they didn't refrigerate them properly. And needless to say, when Trillium suggested that the onus was on the customer to store the beer in a fridge, beer Twitter was not having it. So I've included some of those comments on the next few slides on what transpired, but there's certain comments that I couldn't display during a public presentation. So let's take a look at those now. So first of all, had this communication. They had some customers who had cans explode. They provided some follow-ups on how to properly store their product to avoid that occurrence. But you had some real backlash here. One user commented, I don't take part in beer Twitter that often anymore, but I'll say this, if you sell a beer that can explode if not refrigerated, you shouldn't sell it. There was another user that said, I'm old enough to remember a time when if a beer I brought exploded because of the packaging error, it wasn't my fault. A comment about Truly lemonades. And this one, if it is perfectly reasonable to ask customers to keep beer cold for freshness. It is completely irresponsible to ask customers to keep beer cold to stop it from exploding in a way that may cause undue harm. Now, I want to be fair. I don't know anything about Trillium's inventory operation, but what I can tell you is that lot tracking can help you avoid such a PR nightmare. With lot tracking, you'd be able to understand which lots these exploding products came from and would be able to recall these goods or similar goods quickly. This is not only going to save you from a Twitter fight like this, but it's also going to save you future revenue and allow you to maintain trust with your customer. So there are other benefits to lot tracking. The first is what we just mentioned, the ability to quickly recall finished goods. So should the situation arise, if you're around long enough, contamination is just going to be a fact of life. The quicker you can recall those products, the fewer people that have negative experiences with your product. At the very least, lot tracking allows you to quickly pull goods from shelves and tap rooms, which is going to save you revenue and ultimately your reputation. Number two, lot tracking allows you to be more scientific in production. And what I mean by this is by understanding which exact inventory from which exact lots you're using in production, you can get an even more granular understanding of how to produce quality. And the third point in which lot tracking can help is that it helps you inform customers more. So by providing more detailed information regarding the ingredients that go into making one of your products, you can form a deeper connection with your customer, because your customer, whether that means like putting information on a label regarding the lot of the apples or there are certain ingredients, whether that's informing taproom staff of the specific lot that certain product or certain batches came from, this is going to allow you to tell a greater story about your product. And craft consumers and craft cider producers, consumers especially, are looking for stories and ways that they can connect more intimately with your product. And while lot tracking is like somewhat boring and can be kind of technical, lot tracking is going to allow you to better tell that story to your customers. So the next thing I want to do here is a little thought exercise. Feel free to comment in the chat. I want to hear what is your process for recall due to contamination or poor quality. I'm going to go on mute for just a minute. I want to see what responses come in the chat. I want to use this opportunity to share ideas and see what you all do in terms of recalling finished goods. So I don't want to hold us up for too long. We got one response from John that you already have a recall protocol, which is great. That's fantastic. Glad to hear it. By the way, one thing I also want to mention is that feel free to throw any questions that you have in either the Q&A section or the chat section of this webinar. I'll be reviewing some questions at the end. From Rob, we have hasn't happened yet. Glad to hear it. What I'll just say is that it may never happen, but in the case that it does, having a lot tracking system and being able to track your finished goods at a more granular level is definitely going to help you, should the situation arise. So I'm going to close out of the chat here and move on to our next slide. And we talked about the importance of lot tracking with any sort of production or inventory management software, but there are several other must-haves when it comes to inventory in a production management software. Now, the first is perhaps the most important point. It's that you need to have an inventory software that encompasses all the departments at your company. You're not going to be able to understand your raw ingredient inventory without understanding how and when that inventory is consumed during production. And you're not going to be able to understand your finished good inventory unless that inventory is constantly updated with batches that you've just finished and sales data marking its depletion. Excuse me. Second point here is having a software that syncs to your accounting platform is incredibly important as well. All the efficiency created by having a inventory management or production management software where you're entering all that inventory data, volume data, sales data, all that efficiency is going to be negated if you have to enter that information not only in the inventory management software, but also in the accounting software. So got to make sure that whatever system you're using, it syncs up with your financials. The third point here is that it's really important that whatever your inventory management system is that it creates one system of record for all your teams. And again, this sort of ties back into the first point. This is going to allow for the sharing of knowledge and keeping people on the same page without constant phone calls or meetings. On top of that, typically a software platform is going to have an inventory forecasting tool that your team can use to understand what you need to order more of, which means you won't have to pore over spreadsheets for hours to come to the same determination. So software can certainly help in that way. If your sales team is on the platform as well, often by putting in future sales or work orders, that will create demand for certain products to be made as well. So these are three really important characteristics that you're going to want to see in an inventory management software, whatever that may be. But production management is more than just inventory management, more than lot tracking. Let's now take a look at some of the other facets, how technology can help you with production management. So after lot tracking and inventory management, the next way that technology can help your production team is through recipe management. Managing recipes will allow you to be more consistent when executing repeatable batches, but it's also going to allow you to be more data-driven in your experimentation. Now, there are several benefits to maintaining recipes in a production software system. First, if you've ever had your head cider maker leave, you know that it's super important to keep your recipes and your blends, styles, in some place other than that individual's head. So keeping recipes in a software is going to allow for seamless continuity when there are abrupt changes in your business. And that's never been more important than now, with COVID-19 making such a huge impact, not only in the craft beverage industry, but on nearly every industry. So having your recipes saved in a semi-permanent location is going to allow you to meet whatever unpredictable challenges lie ahead. The second thing that you're going to want out of a software helping you manage production is the ability to create recipe templates. Now, this is more related to your use of the software than anything else. Recipe templates are going to allow you to quickly input recipes into whatever software you choose. So, the initial onboarding period could be quite laborious, and having recipe templates is going to speed up your onboarding for sure. But perhaps most importantly, they're going to allow you to achieve a consistency with regards to your recipe cadence in the software. So this first point, like keeping track of your recipes in the software, that's all well and good, but if every recipe looks radically different in the way that it's organized, so like not only in the ingredients, but in the way that it's laid out in the software platform, then it's not going to be very useful for you and your team because no one's going to know how to use it. So recipe templates, huge part what you're going to want to see in a production management software. Perhaps the most important thing in a production management software that's going to help you is the ability to track batch costs. It's going to allow you to understand how much you're spending, where your margins are good, and where they need work. In other words, building recipes also informs pricing decisions. Again, similar to the other topics that we've covered, the effect of software is not only felt in the production side of things, but it's also felt elsewhere in your business. So I took this GIF from my Ecos demo site. Again, not a sales pitch, but just wanted to show you how you can view recipe costs and batch costs when you save recipes in a piece of software, be that Ecos or any other production management software. You can save multiple recipes to a single product. You can also see on a very granular level, both in graph form as well as line item form, the cost of that recipe broken down. Again, this is going to be very helpful as you continue to grow your business. It's going to inform pricing decisions. It's going to inform purchasing decisions. And it's just going to be generally very helpful as you continue to grow your business. So the third really key area that I wanted to discuss is how technology can help you with production management in the form of task management. So task management flows from recipe management when we're thinking about production. If you record how you make a product through a step-by-step process, you can allocate those steps or tasks to members of your team. Managing tasks through a software is not only going to allow you to communicate more effectively, but it's going to allow you to achieve transparency and ultimately become more efficient, which is going to save you money in the end. That's what we mean by efficiency. Now, the advantages of managing tasks in a software platform are perhaps best articulated by what you lack and what your challenges are in the absence of such technology. So the first is that if you don't manage your tasks at your facility through a piece of software, you're most likely doing it on spreadsheets. This can get confusing quickly. Some of the questions, problems that arise, where do these spreadsheets live? How many do you have? Does your team have access to all of them? Do you want your team to have access to all of them? Can everybody edit them? Or can only some people edit them? Do you want everyone to edit them? Are people reminded when to complete tasks when you enter them in spreadsheets? And how is your team alerted when the day changes and when that's recorded in a spreadsheet. And these are just some of the issues that can arise when you're using spreadsheets to manage your production team. Now, second, and this is a related point, without tech, you're most likely assigning tasks to team members manually. And by that, I mean whether that's entering in information in a spreadsheet, shooting someone a text, or giving someone a call. These methods lack consistency, and eventually something's going to fall through the cracks, either because a text is not seen or an email is not seen. So again, that's another challenge that you might face without having a piece of dedicated software to communicate and manage tasks within your team. The last point here is that without tech, you may not have a system that reminds your team of the tasks that they need to complete each day. Task reminders, even if they're triggered from some sort of mutual calendar that you have set up, so nothing fancy, they're going to go a long way in making sure that everything gets done at your facility. So a natural offshoot of task management is communication and how you can use software and technology to communicate. Using software to communicate is going to create transparency, accountability, and traceability at your company. So we conducted a recent survey of over 1,500 breweries and cideries, and we found that roughly 70% of folks are using text messages to communicate internally with their teams. Now, texts can be great, but they're lacking in several ways. First, it's hard to share files, and that's really important if you're sharing brew sheets, you're sharing, the results of fermentation records. Really tough to share those via text. Second, it's really hard to collaborate with many team members. You could have a group text, but pulling someone in, the process is just not efficient. Also, with regards to reminders, saving information, text is not a great solution. Now, on the other hand, there are a ton of really cheap or even free communication tools that you can use for your team. And what we found is around 50%, a little over 50% of those 1,500 breweries and cideries were using such tools for their communication. And whether that's Slack, Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts, whatever it is, having a place where you can communicate, share files, bring in other team members as needed is going to be crucial for facilitating that transparent, smooth communication. Now, if you can sort of elevate that, you can up the ante, if you will. There's a paid version of Slack that has more saving capabilities. You can see your chat history in a more detailed way. There's also, if you want to communicate directly on other records, like recipe records, batch records, then you're going to need a dedicated production management software, something like Ecos, for instance. And that, might cost you more, but it just depends on what level of communication, what you're looking to get. There are plenty of software options available that are going to help you communicate more effectively amongst your team. So this leads me to my last point, which is that technology can help you maintain accurate records that are going to help you in the production process. So everything that we've covered up to this point, lot tracking, inventory management, recipe documentation, task management, feed into the creation of accurate records. And by record keeping, I don't mean just like actual measurements that you're taking throughout the batch, but I'm also referring to having a permanent record of who did what and when. This data is going to allow you to achieve consistency and grant you insights that will allow you to produce at a higher quality. So technology can help you generate many different types of data and records, but there are three really important types that come to mind. First, technology can help you create records that are going to give you batch insights. This includes reporting on batch yield, batch costs, and measurements taken during a batch. These insights, will allow you to understand the production of your product at a more granular level and allow you to recognize trends that make great products. Second, production-oriented software can help you keep records with regards to equipment sanitation logs and cleaning. I don't need to tell all of you how important it is anytime to be constantly cleaning your facility, but especially with everything going on with COVID, to be constantly cleaning your facility and your production vessels is never more important. A good piece of production management software is going to allow you to record cleaning at your facility. It's also going to allow you to record costs associated with those cleaning materials. Lastly, and perhaps most important, technology can create forecasting data. Now, this point ties back into recipe creation. If you detail which ingredients are needed in a given recipe or batch, many production-oriented software platforms will project out on what ingredients you need to buy based on your planned batch activity. Likewise, if your sales team puts in future sales orders that need to be filled, many tech platforms will then notify you that certain products will need to be produced. Both the sales and production aspects of forecasting, again, speak to the need to have your entire team on your production management software, or at least have that software integrated with the tools used by other members of your team. Now, I spoke earlier this week with John Clowney over at Bull City Cider Works. We were just talking on how technology has changed the way that they do production, how it solves some of their problems. And I picked out this quote from our conversation. I thought it was particularly apt for this presentation. He said, before onboarding a tech platform, one of the most significant challenges was record keeping through multiple spreadsheets. It handicaps your ability to do any legitimate forecasting. If you're manually compiling all that data, what you're looking for may be there, but it's too hard to find to actually be useful. Thought this was super on point. One of the things that I want to hammer home here is that you can do most of the things that we're discussing without technology, but it's going to take you a ton longer. That's kind of nullifying doing those activities anyway. It's going to take too much time to do to be worthwhile. So technology can not only help you generate new records, give you greater insight, but it's also going to allow you to accelerate the things that you're already doing. Now, whatever software you implement, be that an inventory management software, or production management software, sales software, a new tool for communication, there are several keys that we've identified for successful software utilization. The first is having a dedicated champion. Having someone that is at the top of your organization, that's in charge of the implementation process, that acts as the go-between between the tech company or the product and your team, figuring out who needs to do what, super important. There's such a thing as too many cooks in the kitchen. If everybody gets involved, no one exactly knows what they're doing. You need that one person who's going to allocate work and how exactly you're going to implement that new piece of software. Number two, it's super important to communicate with your team on the why. So if you're an owner, if you're a head cider maker, you might understand at a more intimate level how a piece of software is going to help you in your production. But if your team doesn't understand that why, doesn't get aligned with you, then it's not going to really mean a whole lot, because you're probably not going to have those folks using the new piece of technology to the fullest extent. So super important, not only for you to understand the why, but to also communicate that benefit to the other members of your team. Similar, it's important to have a plan when you onboard a new piece of software. Likely, really any software that you're going to implement can do a million different things. You need to identify what are the things that you want to get out of that software, because without sort of a guide and defining success, you're just going to be shooting from the hip. You're going to not really understand, what the key focus is and what exactly you want to get out of the software. Another thing I have on here, and I think this is actually the most nuanced point, maybe in this entire presentation, is that a piece of technology is great in helping you achieve the things that you already do more efficiently, it can also be something that prompts behavior changes. So technology, again, like you can mold it however you wish to the way you do things, but there might be certain reasons why a piece of technology is set up that might make you think more about why you do things at your facility. You know, if you don't lot track for the moment and you import a lot tracking software or a system that can do lot tracking, it's a great example of, you know, the technology is giving you the ability to change your behavior. So when you onboard a new piece of software, shouldn't just be thinking, how can I mold this software to my use? It's how can I get the most out of the software by perhaps even tweaking my behavior. Another point here, constant communication loop with you and your team. You know, onboarding a new piece of software can be a hurdle, and constantly communicating, allocating work, describing, you know, when you're going to be officially live with that software, super important. It's very important to have everyone on the team on the same page when it comes to implementing a new piece of software. Last thing on this slide, lean in. There are certain parts in a software implementation, whether that's Slack, whether that's, you know, Monday.com, there are going to be parts that are uncomfortable, that are confusing. And only by leaning into that discomfort are you going to overcome those challenges and really get the most that you're looking for out of any piece of software to help you with your production process. So with that, I'll take any questions. I'm going to go on mute for a few minutes. Feel free to shoot any questions in the Q&A, shoot sections in the chat, whatever works for you. I'll be answering those when I come back online. So again, feel free to shoot over questions now. So we've got a couple questions. First question, does ECOS or other similar inventory systems you know of integrate easily with point of sale systems like Square, Arrived, etc.? The answer is yes. ECOS, we're currently working on several POS integrations. So we're not integrating with any POS system at the moment, but that is very much on the product roadmap. I can't really speak to other inventory management systems in terms of their integrations, but I'm sure that other systems integrate with all sorts of pieces of technology. I can say that ECOS does integrate with QuickBooks, both online, desktop, as well as Xero. We also have a question, are there questions or issues that you hear cider makers asking for help on over and over again? You know, not in particular. I think the thing that comes up most is that, you know, there's certain ways that you can track individual bases and certain styles, certain blends. And the thing that I would say is that if you're ever onboarding a piece of production software, it's most important to get the standard operating procedure right from the beginning, whether that means like a recipe or whatever. Getting it set up from the system on day one in terms of how to blend in your base product and what the mechanics of that are and whatever software you choose, that's going to be the biggest key to success. Because I see a lot of folks that understand the inventory aspects, you know, for sales folks, they understand the sales aspects, but, you know, if you don't have really SOP with regards to blending and the mechanics of that, you know, you're gonna run into trouble later on. So we have another question. Is your software cyber secure? The answer is yes. If you're looking for more details on that, feel free to email us. I'm going to have our email in the next slide, success@goecos.com. We can answer whatever specific questions that you have then. We also have a question regarding the certain language cadence in Ecos pertaining to cider creation. We started as a beer management tool to help breweries and to help brewers manage their businesses. And over time, we have added more cider-specific language and cider-specific functionality to our platform, and that actually specifically applies to production. So, we've made several changes to how volume is tracked in the system, for instance, that is very particular to cider makers. Any other questions? Well, if there are no other questions, then we'll move forward here. So let me close out of this screen. First of all, I want to give a shout out. Make sure to tune in next week to the Cider Business School series. Next week, there's going to be a sales panel on the future of selling. That sales panel is going to include Bull City Cider Works, Stem Ciders, Half Pint, as well as Square. So definitely make sure to check that out. And also on here, I just want to thank you all for listening today. I really appreciate you allowing me to come share some of my insights, some of my thoughts with you. Feel free, if you have any questions at any point down the line, to shoot me an email at success@goecos.com. Happy to answer any questions that come up.
Yeah, I also just wanted to thank everyone for tuning in today. I think next week's panel is going to be amazing. It's really pulling in people from all or many aspects of the industry, including tech and distribution, which I know a lot of people, we have so many questions around distribution already from people who registered. So if there's one to catch live, I'd say that's the one. And I want to just thank you again, Josh, for your time and your thoughts and energy in putting this awesome presentation together. So thank you and the rest of the Ecos team. And we will see everyone next week. Registrations are still rolling. So if there's anyone that you think could benefit from this, or anyone else from your team that you want to have access to this resource, sign them up. It's free, and registrations don't close for like the following session. So thanks again. Have a great weekend. See you all next week.
Thank you, Emily. Have a great one, guys.
Yeah, you too. Bye.